Now, for most fans of the My Hero Academia series, the story of Stain began shortly after the UA Sports Festival and concluded with the Hosu incident. This, however, is actually not the full story. In this video, we'll look back on the life of Chizome Akaguro, the man behind the force that is Stain. All colored panels were done by us at Plot Armor. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is Chizome Akaguro, Stain, Origin. The story of Chizome began with All Might's debut making a huge impression on him, so much so that it inspired him to pursue becoming a hero, and as a result enrolling in a private hero school. At this school, however, Chizome would be disappointed by the, in his opinion, morally corrupt view of heroes taught by the education system. Being inspired by All Might is a common thing throughout the story. For Chizome though, this inspiration would manifest into something dangerous, something that couldn't be further from the ideals of All Might. After being disappointed by his educators, Chizome would drop out of school the summer of his freshman year, and from there he would attempt to spread his philosophy through words to no avail. By the end of his teenage years, he would hopelessly realize that his words had no power, and from there, Stain would begin to take shape. For the next 10 years, in order to fulfill his duty, Chizome would study and train in the art of murder. The heroes today are fakes. Heroes shouldn't seek compensation. Heroes are to be the embodiment of self-sacrifice. To Stain, these were all true, and he needed to deliver this message and create that change. It was from this point on that for a while, Chizome would wear a mask. There was the everyday man with hidden ideals, and the dark force that when night falls would act on those ideals. This dark figure that Stain would later be born from was Stendhal, an existence that in his own words surpassed the confines of humanity. This disparity was important. The two personas, the existences, the sides, should not mix. The full extent of Chizome's regular life is information that at this time we're not privy to. However, the idea of a murderer living a double life is nothing new, and for that reason we can imagine he likely lived an ordinary life surrounded by friends, co-workers, all who were unaware of just how violent he could be. The life of his other side, Stendhal, however, is one that we can discuss extensively. Our first introduction to Stendhal was fittingly an assassination, and a memorable one at that. Donning a stylish full-face mask and equipped with tools for murder, we would be introduced to this mysterious character who had his sights on taking down a Yakuza organization. Funny enough, this crime syndicate was an obvious parody on the Avengers, featuring Tank Tetsu as Iron Man, Hammer Soji as Thor, Barehanded Haruhisa as Hulk, and Manhole Rojiha as Captain America. The Japanese Avengers, as I like to refer to them, were looking like they had a chance in this fight, but just as they were about to launch a special attack, it happened. That almost diseased looking tongue showed itself, and the room froze. It was then that we knew this was Chizome. Just like that, it was over. The slashing began and continued until no signs of life remained. The room was painted red, and judgment had been given. The blood samples Stendhal had prior to even slashing his targets came through an accomplice he had at the time collaborated with. She'd acquired them through free medical exams that the organization had conducted at an earlier point. A very clever tactic and a firm reminder of how scary the quirk blood curdle can be. The ability allows Chizome to paralyze an enemy for a limited amount of time by ingesting any amount of blood, and is very fitting for a killer like himself. Interestingly though, through interactions like the one with his collaborator Tamao, it becomes clear as day just how warped Chizome's perspective was. In his mind, he was more of a vigilante, maybe even a hero, despite the amount of blood he spilled, and even despite the fact that he worked with a villain as a means to an end. A later incident would change Chizome and his other side Stendhal, and that was an encounter with the vigilante cast, in what would become somewhat of a fateful crossing. Koichi the Crawler was struggling against a local villain that was at least twice his side, when he was saved by none other than Stendhal. The encounter was cut short, but by the end, when asked who he is, Stendhal, despite all the killings he's done, expressed that he and Koichi are alike in their meddling. If it wasn't clear already, by this point it is undeniable that Stendhal wholeheartedly believed he was doing good work. The next time the two would meet, they would be enemies. In between that time though, the small-time villain would be hunted down. Justice had not been served. Stendhal made sure to find him, and with sick excitement, slayed the armored villain. It wasn't until when the next target was located that the Crawler would again cross paths with Stendhal. Unaware of just how psychotic Stendhal was, the Crawler tried to de-escalate the situation. However, with no hesitation, Stendhal would still slash his new target. It was then clear to Koichi that the man with the mask meant business. The Crawler too was inspired by All Might, and he too was not a hero. However, while he aimed to maintain peace in his neighborhood, he was no killer. The two were now at odds, with the Crawler attempting to help Stendhal's prey escape, and Stendhal on the hunt. Again though, with Blood Curdle, a quirk that is just terrifying, especially if you're unaware of its details, Stendhal would gain an advantage. The Crawler had helped a villain, and to Stendhal that made him just as guilty, which is weird because he too helped a villain earlier in the story. But yes, to Stendhal, the Crawler was now a villain, and he was ready to cut them down. It was then that, right on time as always, Knuckleduster arrived from the sky to the rescue. Stendhal was actually familiar with the identity of his new opponent and had some respect for him because, in his own words, the two shared the same cause. Knuckleduster was quick to shut that down though, making it clear that Stendhal was nothing but a mad slasher. The two would get into a fight, but that fight can honestly hardly be considered one. The build-up was decent, but it ended swiftly with a mask-shattering punch to Stendhal's face. With one hit, it was over. That one hit would not only reconstruct the man's face, but it killed Stendhal and warped Chizome. In the moments following the hit, Knuckleduster made some interesting points, describing Chizome as the kind of person that puts on a disguise and forgets all about his everyday self, imagining that he's an immortal superhuman. The kind of person that forgets reasoning and acts with low determination. These words really touched the now bloody Chizome, who started to retreat but first shared his realization that what's worse than a villain is a sham hero, those who lack determination but still applaud themselves. His mask-like ignorance and his mind had now been stripped away. Later that night at his safe house, we would again see a bloody Chizome leaning over a sink, muttering about what he had lacked: power, speed, weapons, and strategy, far too much. But the greatest thing missing to him was determination. His earlier accomplice, Tamao, interrupted this with her usual humor, but Chizome today wasn't having it, throwing a knife with no hesitation in response to her remarks. Then, with his other blade, he would begin scraping at his face, cutting off his nose as a way of showing his determination, a way of shedding that mask. Dripping blood and muttering what would become his revised philosophy as Stain, Chizome would walk off. This was the last time we would see Chizome before Stain's appearance in the main story. From here, he continued to train and improve in all areas before the Hosu incident and all the killings that happened prior. Stain's philosophy was very extreme, but it resonated with a lot of people. While I don't think Stain's methods were right, I do think society needed to change something. Stain is one of the story's most notable villains, so I'd love to hear what you guys think about him, and more specifically his ideals, in the comments. If you enjoyed this type of content and want more, be sure to comment and let us know whose origin you'd like to see covered next, and check out our previous episode on the origin of Eraserhead. And with that, we have the end of the video. This was the origin, you guys know the rest of the story. For some of the best My Hero Academia content on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to Plot Armor. Until next time, I'm KJ, have a great day, goodbye!